Jerry Dipoto has apologized for his comments during that disaster of a press conference on Tuesday, but does it matter? Talk about that and a whole lot more from that infamous presser and his radio hit today here on the Locked On Mariners podcast. Colby, hit it.
You are Locked On Mariners, your daily Seattle Mariners podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Ahoy, sailors. It is Thursday, October 5th, 2023. This is Ty Gonzalez and Colby Patnode for the Locked On Mariners podcast, brought to you by Sleepers. Swing for the fences on Sleeper Picks, and you can win up to 100 times your money. Download the Sleeper app and use promo code Locked On. That's LOCKDON. You'll get up to $100 matched on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. Currently operational in over 30 states. Check out Sleeper today. Thank you so much for making us your first listen. Subscribe, like, and turn on alerts if you're watching on YouTube, or subscribe and leave a 5-star review on your preferred podcast platform if you like what you hear. And if you're part of the crew and rock with us every single day, let us know in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you. And if you want to hear from us even more, please consider signing up for our Patreon. You can now get a free 7-day trial to check out the show. The link, as well as our social accounts, is in the description of this episode. So, on the show today, we'll cover the aftermath of the Mariners' now infamous end-of-year press conference, including what Jerry Dipoto had to say on 710 Seattle Sports this morning, and some of the other less controversial things he had to say on Tuesday. But we'll start with what he had to say today in response to the reaction to the 54% comment that we discussed and dragged heavily on our last episode. So Jerry opened up by saying to Mike Salk on 710 Seattle Sports this morning, quote, "I'd like to say I'm generally embarrassed by the way at least that comment, and especially one other, was received. You know, I've been doing this job or roles like this for a long time now, and I've made mistakes. I've made my fair share like most do, and this was kind of one of those times. I just did a poor job of illustrating the points that I was trying to make, and in one case, I chose to try humor to lighten a grave question, and obviously that wasn't what the moment called for. With this one, the 54%, you know, I just completely whiffed in my attempt to paint a big picture baseline of what obviously makes more sense to me than our fans and media. Our goal isn't to be a mediocre. Our goal is to win championships and to play a high level for a long time, and that's what I was trying to convey. Obviously, it didn't help. I wish I could hit reset and try it again, but that moment's gone. The best I can do is continue to try to be candid and accessible, and I feel like over my time here, we've done that. Players, staff, all of our personnel. We want our fans to feel like they're part of the team and at minimum have a front row seat to what's happening. We tell them what we're doing and then we do that thing. They may not always agree with it or like it, but we're very candid in that way. I can assure everyone that we want to win. And the 54%, if you look back over the history of baseball, and I actually said this in the press conference, unfortunately it didn't make it to the cuts, but if you look back over the history of baseball since the divisional format came to be in 1969 and in decade-long segments, teams that averaged or achieved 54% win percentage over 10-year period or greater, they tend to wind up in the World Series and consistent members of the postseason. We're not trying to win 54% of our games. We're trying to win 100% of our games. The 54% is if you reach that bar and you're able to stay at or above that bar for a 10-year period, you're going to play in a World Series. And I say that confidently because it's true. 19 teams have been able to do that in decade-long increments. 19 different teams, and 16 of them have played in the World Series, and many have won championships. That's what I was trying to say, and it probably makes more sense to me, and for that, I apologize. We're not trying to string you out. We're not trying to ask people to wait another decade. The significance of that is, in this decade, that's what we're doing. From the start of the COVID summer in 2020, we have played at that level. We've reached one postseason. We hope to reach many more, and we do it in a process-oriented way. And obviously, I did a poor job of trying to convey that thought, and I feel badly about it. So, two things on this very quick. Before I kick it to you here, Colby, and I see you're I see you're asleep. I see you're asleep. Yep. Wake up. So 2 things on that real quick. Glad he apologized. I don't think it's a great apology though, because it still feels like he's putting the onus on the fans and the media for misinterpreting him. Whereas I wish that he would have just said, look, I failed to read the room. It was stupid. I'm sorry. and then move on from there. And it still feels like he was trying to justify all of it there. I mean, that was literally 3 pages that I just read to you guys, which is why I put Colby to sleep here. So Colby, what do you think of the apology from Mr. Dipoto?
First of all, it's not a genuine apology if you say in any form, well, it was just a joke, a bad joke. Like, nope, that's not an apology. Or it's a bad one at the very least. And the idea that like, oh, well, I actually said all that, but it didn't make the cut. And it's like, that's on you for not televising your end of the year presser. Like, that's still on the org, maybe not Jerry specifically, but if you don't want your quotes taken out of context, you put it live on your YouTube channel or on the internet or whatever, so that it can't be sliced and diced like that. And it wasn't. But yeah, so I think it's a necessary apology for Jerry. I think that it's still a pretty poor one because the whole like it just kind of reads, at least the first part, like, what, it was a joke, you can't take a joke, and it's like that's not what you want to say. Like, eliminate the like I tried the humor part of it and it didn't work. Like, no, this isn't a night at the Improv, Jerry. like you screwed up, okay, and you used a lot of words when you could have said like, no, that was bad, that was dumb of me to say, I didn't explain myself properly, and then this is what we're trying to do. And I do like that he explained the 54% thing, which is something we are going to talk about. It's something that Ty and I knew he was trying to say. It doesn't make it okay that he said it, though. Like, again, this is something that we've talked about before. The idea behind it, like the 54% and like what Ty and I assumed that he meant, that's all perfectly fine. That's like a logical, reasonable goal.
Sure.
You don't say it out loud. You don't say it out loud. And then when you get caught for saying something stupid, you don't go like, oh, I tried a joke and it didn't work. It's not open mic night at Silly's. Okay. You just have to wear it. You have to own it. Like, I was too candid. Because you don't have to tell the fans everything. And I know that Jerry really prides himself on being open and doing stupid shows like ours and, other podcasts and just trying to be out there as much as you can. You don't have to tell everybody everything. And especially if you're not going to go into great detail when you do it. So yeah, Jerry's apology, it's about what I would expect. It was long-winded. It was, about 3 minutes too long, but I do appreciate the effort at least. Although I'm with you, I don't think it's a particularly good one. When you start out by saying like, "Oh, it was just a joke, and I guess you guys didn't get it, and so I apologize that I didn't, set it up well enough for you guys to get it." Like, no, Jerry, we're not the idiots. Okay, you screwed up. This is about you screwing. It's not our job to interpret what you're saying. Yeah. It's your job to tell us. So, yeah, I whatever. I appreciate the effort, I guess, but like, to me, it's not a great apology, but it is what it is. And honestly, I don't care. I really don't care.
I merely appreciate it from the standpoint that he needed to do this. Yeah. I said on Tuesday night when we posted that show where we're just mercilessly dragging him for how that press conference went, that he needed to issue a retraction. Mm-hmm. But with that said, and I also said this, it wasn't going to make it better. And this doesn't make it better. The only thing that is going to make it better, that is only going to earn him some points here with the fan base that he has scorned here, is by doing something this offseason.
Actions.
Yeah. Actions speak louder than words here, folks. And he's got to kick this offseason's ass. That's the only way that you make this better, is by kicking this offseason's ass and having success on the field next year, and getting back into the postseason, competing for a division, competing for a World Series, et cetera, reaching the goals that you have laid out here. It's the only way that you make it better. Winning fixes all. Winning fixes all at the end of the day. So if he's able to put his team in the best position to do that, then I don't think anyone, I mean, most people, at least at the end of the day, are going to care about what he said in a stupid, random end of year press conference at the start of October 2023. So there's a very easy way to make most people forget about this. All right, we're going to talk more about the 54% comment and try to be fair here and make sense of it and just kind of talk about our feelings on all of it. But first, a reminder, this episode of the Locked On Mariners podcast is brought to you by Sleeper. All right, folks, the MLB playoffs are right around the corner, which means the clock is ticking on your chance to 100 times your cash on daily fantasy baseball. Pick more or less on stats for your favorite players like home runs, hits, strikeouts, and more for up to a 100 times payout on Sleeper. Get your picks right, and you could win big, my friend. If things didn't go well in your home league this year, no worries. You can still salvage the fantasy baseball season over at Sleeper. There you can pick the players you want and call your shot. And when you use the promo code Locked On, that's LOCKEDON, you'll get up to $100 matched on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. Currently operational in over 30 states. Check out Sleeper today. And you're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. Thank you again for making us your first listen. Colby, we spent a good portion of our Patreon show yesterday, patreon.com/control the zone, talking about the 54% comment from Jerry Dipoto and actually trying to make sense of it. Because at the end of the day, our issue with him saying that was that he said it. Right, and he did a very poor job of illustrating that, as he alluded to today in his apology on the radio. But the philosophy overall, it makes sense. It's just, you can't expect the average fan who's very frustrated and upset and very impatient, rightfully so, by the way, with how everything has gone the past calendar year and just the state of the organization as a whole. You can't expect them to just dissect that and read between the lines, right? But again, the philosophy of it all does make sense. This is what good teams ultimately strive for, correct?
Kinda, yeah. Basically the idea of the 54% is that, like, that's not necessarily the goal. That is the minimum. Like, that is the minimum average over the course of a decade. Because if you win 87 games or more per season over the course of 10 years, yeah, you're going to make the playoffs a bunch. You're going to have a good shot. And again, it's to me, the 54% it's, hey, some years we're only going to win 83 just because of bad luck, poor performance, but other years we're going to win 95. And when we add all those up at the end of it, we expect by 2030, the Mariners will have played, 87 win ball over the course of an entire decade. And that should give you plenty of bites at the apple and all that stuff. So sustainability is sometimes a bit overvalued. It's sometimes used as a kind of a crutch to not go and spend big on, like, Juan Soto, because like, oh, we could do that, but over the next 5 years, we're going to have less money to spend and we want 5 bites of the apple instead of 1, blah, blah, blah. Like, sometimes it can be used as a crutch, but for the most part, over the, long run, consistently giving yourself a good shot to, make the playoffs gives you a good shot to win World Series or get to them at the very least. So, it is interesting. The Mariners have had a decade where they've had a 540 or greater winning percentage. It was, I believe, 94 to 2003. And they are one of the only teams of those 19 that Jerry talked about that didn't go to the World Series, let alone win one. So kind of tough, but yeah, again, the philosophy in and of itself is fine, but you can't tell fans to be thankful that you missed the playoffs again. You can't tell fans to be patient. Not Mariner fans, because the organization has lost that right. So I get it. I totally get fan reaction to it. And again, like Ty and I talked about on Tuesday, like, just stupid. Like, just don't say it. It's beyond stupid, but it's stupid to say out loud,
right,
publicly.
Well, and my ultimate issue with the 54% comment is that the way that he expressed it, he was expressing it in guarantees and absolutes. He's saying definitively, you always make, he said verbatim, they always make the playoffs.
Yeah.
And that's not true. Over the last decade, there have been 5 teams that over the last decade that have finished at, or that have posted a 54% win percentage or higher. 3 of them missed the playoffs this year. The Yankees have missed the playoff. The Yankees are one of those teams. They've missed the playoffs 4 times over the last decade. The Guardians have missed the playoffs a few times.
Sure.
The Cardinals have missed the playoffs a couple times. Like,
forget all that. The 2018 Mariners won 89 games. They missed the playoffs. The 2021 Mariners won 90 games. They missed the playoffs. The 2023 Mariners won 87 games. Those are all 54% or higher, and all 3 of those teams missed the playoffs.
Well, And again, right, like what I'm saying though is like no matter how you slice that comment, with him saying things in absolutes, so whether you're looking at it from a 1-year thing, like if you win 54% of the time you'll make the playoffs, that doesn't work because that literally just happened this year where they didn't make the playoffs and they won 54% of the time. And if you try to spin it from a 10-year standpoint, that doesn't work either when you look at the Cardinals and you look at the Guardians and you look at the Yankees, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So you know, and he didn't, he rephrased it today where he was talking about it's more like most of the time, right? It's not always,
Right.
which I think is probably what he was trying to say even back on Tuesday. But again, when you do say always, when you speak in absolutes, when you speak in guarantees, it's very easy to poke holes in the whole 54%.
I don't have an issue with the philosophy of trying to build a sustainable winner, and you know, if you win 870 games over the course of 10 years at minimum, if you win that many, you probably made the playoffs a bunch of times. You probably won a couple divisions. You probably had a couple deep playoff runs and all that stuff. And that's all well and good. But you don't say it out loud. That is an internal number. Like you don't have to share everything. And so internally, that's a good goal. Externally, publicly, your goal is to win the World Series every year. That's how you have to phrase it. So, you know, it's again, just to clarify again, Ty and I don't have an issue with that being their goal.
Yes.
To, you know, over the course of a decade to win 54, because that's all about taking as many shots as you can at winning over the course of a decade.
And like he said on Tuesday, you're sometimes you're going to win 60%, sometimes you're going to win 50%, and that's just alluding to the ebbs and flows, the natural ebbs and flows of baseball, right? Because
sometimes
it's unpredictable.
Sometimes you have setback years, like, you know, sometimes everything goes wrong. But again, it's not the philosophy itself that Ty and I have a problem with. It's not really even the philosophy itself on Tuesday when we were reacting to this that we had a problem with. It's putting it out there publicly and not recognizing the inevitable issues you're going to run into by saying that out loud, by
and
saying
seemingly not having that explanation pre-planned either, and just kind of trying to let it rip on the fly.
And expecting the average fan, like I said, the sickos out there, Ty and I included, we got what he was trying to say basically immediately.
Yeah.
Like we got to figure it out. But again, most people listening to our podcast, I don't think they're sickos. So to sit there, most people listening to that, you know, listening to that minute-long clip that got cut, they're not sickos. They stumble across that. You have to tailor your message to the masses, and you can't assume that every fan is going to do the work for you to jump up and defend you. So again, the plan itself, you know, what Jerry's done, what the Mariners have done in terms of trying to build a sustainable winner, totally supportive of that. Don't have an issue with it. That's a good goal. I totally understand it. Absolutely.
100%. Yep.
Making that goal public and then not explaining it deeper, that's the mistake. And you deserve to get raked over the coals for it. So I don't feel bad that Jerry feels like his words got like taken out of context or they got misconstrued. Nope. You did that to yourself, buddy. You did that to yourself. So, but you know, ultimately, like you said, if you win, nobody cares.
Right. All right. So let's go over a couple of the other quotes from Tuesday and also today in just a moment. But first, a reminder, this episode of the Locked On Mariners podcast is brought to you by Bunches. Bunches is a new app built just for sports fans where you can chat sports in real time. Click the link in the description to join the app or go to the Apple App Store and download Bunches now. I'm telling you, you're going to love the conversations with other Locked On sports fans. Chat about your team every day. Download the Bunches app today, and when you do, our friends over at Bunches have featured the Locked On MLB Bunch in the Discover tab. You can also click the link in the description to join the Locked On MLB Bunch community today. And you're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. Thank you again for making us your first listen. So we're going to get into a couple of the other things that Jerry Dipoto touched upon. So the first thing here, he was asked about Cal and JP and Ty Francis comments after the last couple of games of the season, talking about what this front office needs to do to support this team in future years. He said, quote, "I don't know the solution to our problems are big name players, and I don't know we have big problems. Would I like big players? Sure, but it's not the only way to build a roster." And he further touched upon that today on the radio when he was apologizing about the patience comment that he made. I was trying to use a little bit of humor. This is Jerry speaking now. The question that I was asked was regarding the addition of big stars and what do you tell your fan base if you don't deliver the big star, and when does the World Series come? And the simple answer to that is adding a big star is much easier when you develop the big star, and we'll look at our center fielder Julio Rodriguez as an example, or the longtime great center fielder for the Mariners and King Griffey Jr. Acquiring a big star from outside is also contingent upon the big star, so I can't guarantee you when that will happen. And I also have been involved in professional baseball all my life, and to think that you're going to predict when we will win the World Series is silly. You're not going to be able to do that. All we can do is continue to execute sound process and build a roster that is good enough to go compete with the best teams in the league. While none of us is happy that we're sitting here at home during the playoffs, and that's how I opened up the comments on Tuesday, we feel proud of what we built over time. We do feel like this roster is built to be a championship roster moving forward. Now we need to go out and we need to add more pieces and find the extra offense, find a way to solve some of our needs, but recognize that we continue to get better in a lot of ways. You know, I try to use humor to diffuse the situation and I whiff. Clearly, I am not a very funny person and I shouldn't have gone there, but that's what I did. And I can openly apologize and again tell you that I'm embarrassed by it. End quote. So, I mean, this was already a foregone conclusion, but that seems to me, reading between the lines, like a confirmation Shohei Ohtani and Juan Soto and guys like that are not going to be Seattle Mariners in 2024 and beyond.
Yes, but it's okay because in the grand 47-year history of the Seattle Mariners, which has, led to 5 playoff appearances in 47 years, we've made our own stars 2 or 3 times. So that's good. What are you saying? What do you say? Like, well, look at what we did with Julio. Cool. Have you done it again yet? No. Okay. But I mean, like right. Griffey, like, oh, you mean 30 years ago? Like Ichiro. Oh, no, you didn't develop Ichiro. He was brought in from the outside. How about that? Nelson Cruz, Robinson Cano. Oh, they were brought in from the outside. How about that? Just stupid. Stop saying that you, God. You didn't make a bad joke, Jerry. You were just being stupid. Stop with, oh, I guess I'm not funny. Yeah, we know that. But also, stop. This isn't a sense of humor thing. Just shut up about the joke. The joke. Anyways. Yeah. So, again, I don't think that they're necessarily like opposed to adding a star player or anything like that. I just don't think that they're going to spend what it takes to do it. So they happen to stumble upon one and, they acquire a guy who comes out of nowhere and turns himself into Freddie Freeman. Like they're not opposed to that, but it sounds like they're pretty opposed to giving Shohei Ohtani $600 million.
So, yeah. So the reason that I wanted to bring this up is because I think it's very important for us to just say now and get this out of the way before we really get into the meat and potatoes of the off season and start doing our off season plan and all that stuff that we're going to do here on the podcast. That just and a lot of fans are not going to agree with this, and this is why I think that it's important to mention this, that if you don't add an Ohtani or a Soto or a Bellinger, you didn't fail the off season. I don't think that you need to add more to the core of your clubhouse or of your club in general. And don't get me wrong, I would absolutely take it if they did. Right. But I don't think you absolutely need to in order to build a World Series caliber roster. You just need a better supporting cast. You need to cover your bases better. Because this team is already like literally with how many deficiencies that the 2023 ball club had, they were right on the doorstep of winning the division. So I think this core in general, and we're talking about Julio, we're talking about JP, we're talking about Cal, we're talking about the pitching staff, etc. I think they're good enough to carry this thing, but they need a better supporting cast. They absolutely need a better supporting cast, and to significantly improve the supporting cast on this roster, you are going to probably have to spend some money. You're probably not going to be able to just do it via trade and getting lucky with some of your development. Like, you're going to have to go out and add some legit veterans who elevate the floor of your club. So that's how the Mariners can have a very successful offseason without adding the big name, without adding the Shohei Ohtani, without adding the Juan Soto, without adding Cody Bellinger.
Noted bootlicker Ty Gonzalez basically echoing later parts of Jerry's interview when he said, we're going to add from the outside. Oh, thanks for that. Thanks for doing us that favor. No, that's the last one. That's the last
Colby
one.
Patnode, who's become part of payroll Twitter.
Yeah, apparently. But no, he said we're going to add from the outside, and he said basically what you said, only in fewer words. This is the one time where brevity was actually Jerry's friend. Imagine that. We do feel like this roster is built to be a championship roster moving forward, and now we need to go out and we need to add more pieces and find the extra offense. Yeah.
Okay.
So
cool. Great. So do it.
Yeah. Talk is cheap, and until you do it and you do it well, it's not going to happen for it. Like, you're not going to, people aren't going to be okay with, I don't expect the Mariners to go out there and get, like, again, just making stuff up here. Like, they're going to go trade for like Jorge Polanco or Anthony Santander, or then they're going to go sign, Jorge Soler, whatever. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, they're going to go get like 2 or 3 really solid bats that fill a couple holes, and Mariner fans, a lot of them are still going to hate the offseason. And I get why. I think they'd be wrong. I mean, we have to see how it looks, but I think they'd be wrong more than likely. They went out and they added 2 or 3 like legitimate everyday players to this lineup. And then maybe like a bench guy. Like, I think they would be wrong to say that's a failure of an offseason, depending on the exact players, but I totally get why. Because they didn't land the star again. And when you look at what Jerry brought in last year, it wasn't good enough. When you look at what Jerry brought in 2 winters ago, it wasn't really good enough. I mean, Winker was okay, but he certainly wasn't what you wanted him to be. And Gino was great, but like, you still were a couple bats short. So I don't think you can expect the fan base to be okay with entering a season where they're going to look at the lineup and be like, well, this guy, if Gino and Ty don't turn it around, then you're 2 bats short again, and all that stuff. So,
right. So a big piece of this is the Teoscar Hernandez conversation. And there's an interesting thing that he said when asked about Teo. On Tuesday, he said that they've already made a decision internally on the qualifying offer, and they're going to talk to Teo and his representatives before, obviously making that information public. He later said today, we have to address the situation with Teoscar, and minimally we will have to fill 1 spot and potentially his. So you read that and it sounds like possibly just bringing back Teo and then just adding 1 bat. That's not enough. That's an F. But he did say minimally. So at minimum, they are going to add 1 bat.
Sure. They're only willing to extend themselves for the 1 bat, and then if anybody else falls into their laps, then they'll add the second one. That sound about right, Jared?
So it's at least 1 bat and bringing back Teo or replacing Teo, which would be 2 bats in theory, but still
you need 2 bats even if you bring back Teoscar.
Yeah,
because Teoscar now, Teoscar is a league average bat. That's what he is. That's what I feel comfortable calling him. This year was what, 108?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, it's the 3rd year in a row, or a 2nd year in a row he's declined off of his previous year numbers. He's on the wrong side of 30. Like, to me, he's a league average bat. So fine. Like, cool. Make Teoscar your 6-hole hitter or your 7-hole hitter, and then talk to me about how good of an offseason you had. But until you do that, I don't care. Honestly, I think that Teoscar is. I think you should move on, but we'll talk about that, I'm sure.
Yeah, no, we'll have plenty of time to talk all about this, and I don't know when officially we'll find out about the qualifying offer and what they're going to do with that. It's just trying to read between the lines. It seems like maybe they're going to extend him the qualifying offer, but they think that he's going to leave in free agency.
Yep. Cool. Just bringing the band back together.
Sure.
I'm thrilled.
Colby from a year ago would hate Colby now.
Well, that's what Jerry gets for failing in the winter and again at the deadline and again at his postseason presser. Like, you've sucked the life out of me, Jerry. I hope you're happy. But hey, you know what? Go get Jorge
I know some
Soler.
people that you would get along with very well now.
You watch your filthy mouth. No, but again, at the end of the day, like, all this talk is incredibly cheap. It means nothing, absolutely nothing. What Jerry and Justin get done this winter is all that matters going forward. So, you know, if you go out and you have a good off season and you win 92 games next year and you win the division or whatever, we're not talking about 54% like ever again. But if you have another setback year and if you fall short in the winter again, and if you don't go out and address it at the deadline again, these conversations are going to be a lot more hostile than they are right now. So, just get to work. Like, I don't need to hear from Jerry anymore for another 6 months. Talk to me on opening day and shut the hell up, Jerry. Go to work.
Yeah, so nothing he has said over the last few days has altered my expectations for the offseason whatsoever. It's just, you know, for the most part, like most of what he said here, outside of a couple of things, is just general like GM speak, nothing burgers, like whatever. You can just ball it up, throw it in the trash. Really, the only takeaway from here is that Jerry Dipoto failed to read the room completely, like on Tuesday and a little bit today, because the apology falls kind of flat in some areas, but whatever.
Not the best apology.
I don't care anymore. This is really
we're not talking about the presser after today.
This is hopefully the last time I ever have to say the words 54%. That's gonna do it for our show. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Locked On Mariners podcast. For Colby Patnode, I'm Trident Gonzalez. Be sure to give us a follow on Twitter at LO_Mariners. You can follow me at Dan Gonzalez, it's TANEGNZLZ, and Colby at CPAT11, that's CPAT11. You can also find all that stuff in the description of this episode. And thank you again for making us your first listen. Have yourself a beautiful baseball day, and we'll see you next time. Peace.